Well, hello and welcome to our Friday night Bible study. This is our Bible study for Friday, May 22, 2026. And you can probably tell this is being pre recorded. And there's a reason for that. Eh,
Doing it early.
Well, we're not live, we're just recording it now.
Yeah, we're doing it early, and that's why it's pre-recorded.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for doing it that way instead of doing it live.
That's an early bird.
Yeah, well, actually, the last few weeks we have had bandwidth problems. What are you saying?
3 a.m. We're early.
Where does it say it's 3 a.m.?
Oh, I make up my own time, dear.
Yeah, I've noticed. Anyway, and one of the things that I talk about occasionally, and that I think is important in what we do, is that you be able to see and read along with us what we're reading out of the scriptures. And if it's out of focus, it's going to be hard to read. And unfortunately, I haven't, maybe it's possible, but I haven't figured out if it is possible to tell my software, don't worry about the frame rate, get a good picture. And then, maybe it takes a few seconds for it to show the when I scroll the text up, but at least that way you'd get a good focused image. So what it tends to do is it hasn't got enough bandwidth to show a picture and get a good frame rate, drops a lot of frames. So rather than dropping more frames, it puts up a partial picture, which is then out of focus. Um, yeah, they're smarter than you are, so they do it their way, and they don't give you the option to say, I want to do it this way. That's how computer programmers are. They're smarter than everybody else in the world, so they just do it because they know better than you do how you should use your computer. It's their computer, not yours anyway. Everybody knows that, right? Anyway, so
I know what your problem is.
what?
I'm on Reddit.
What'd you hear?
Neighbors is stealing all the megabits that are in the air, and if you want better connection, get out there with your bowl and your butterfly net and catch some megabits and put them in the bowl and bring them in the house.
Yeah, right. Well,
No, I haven't taken anything. Ain't funny.
she just hears these strange stories. That's,
I happen to be feeling good at the moment.
yeah, I noticed. Well, anyway, we have been doing this for several years, and we've been doing it from this location, which is, across a hallway from the room that has the internet connection. So we've been using Wi Fi for it. Well, after 3 weeks in a row of a very slow connection, I began to think, that's not going to go away. We need to take some action to do something about it, including potentially pre recording it and uploading it, and then, however long it takes to upload, it takes to upload. When it's done, we schedule a time for it to post, and that way you get a good image and you can read along with us. So I started doing some experiments. Now, some of you may be aware that Wi Fi was added to 10 or more years ago. And so instead of just being only at what they call 2.4 gigahertz, that's a frequency, instead of being just in that band, there are also Wi Fi signals more than twice as high a frequency as that, 5 and possibly 6 gigahertz range. And those signals are capable of greater bandwidth than is the 2.4 gigahertz version. However, if you're trying to reach over a distance or looking for real reliability, you generally go with the lower frequencies because they reach a little farther. Well, okay. So this computer that we do this on had been connected to our 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection, but the router does have the higher available, has a separate network that shows up on the list when you go to connect. So I thought, well, maybe if I hook up to that, I'll get better bandwidth. So I ran. You can get these online speed tests that check the speed of your connection. So I ran it from this computer on the lower band Wi-Fi that we've been using the last few weeks, and it came up with 50 or 60 um, megahertz, megabits per second. That's what they're calling it. Yeah, 50 or 60 megabits per second. But then the upload was between 1 and 2 megabits per second. Well, when I'm streaming, it has a little indication over there on that other screen where I monitor it, and it shows it in kilobits per second, and it's when it likes it, it's at about 4,000, 5,000, somewhere in that range, and it had been under 2,000 those 3 weeks when it was not going well, and the stream wasn't being interrupted. We weren't being disconnected. It just wasn't going very well. So, well, yeah, 1 to 2, that's not good enough. So I switched it over to the high band and tried again. Well, then I got 80 to 90 kilobits per second download, but the upload only got up between 2 and 3. Well, that's an improvement, but it wasn't enough. We need around 5 to have a really good connection. So we weren't getting that. But I did see something in the process of changing the band that we're connected to, because you have to go in, you have to look at your Wi-Fi list, and there were some new entries on the Wi-Fi list, and one of them was an air conditioner. That's right. These days, people are getting household appliances and installed things that connect to the internet over your Wi-Fi. But then they also say, "Here I am." You can see them on the Wi-Fi list. So that kind of can interfere, because now you've got everybody wanting bandwidth. So everybody's got their own internet connection and they're using Wi-Fi, and it all it can get congested and it can cause problems. So it helped to go high, but it wasn't enough. Well, then I had a dental appointment on Wednesday, so after I got done with that, I went down to the store and bought a couple of things that we needed. But I also bought a 50-foot Cat 6 network cable. And it's on the floor right over here, going down to where our internet connection is. So this computer is now connected to the internet by a wired connection. And the back before all this, I did go into my desktop in the room where the internet connection is, and I ran that same speed test, and I got the 80 or 90 megabit per second download, but I got somewhere between 5 or 6 megabits per second upload. Well, that's kind of barely enough, but it's enough, right? So I thought, well, okay, I'll hook it up. Well, I hooked it up onto this computer, and I was using this computer during the week, so I ran that test again. Then I got 2 to 3, maybe 3 or 4. Well, I decided that wasn't enough, so here we are. We're pre-recording it. Now, the answer may be that we go ahead and sign up with the fiber internet provider, because the cable internet provider does normally have that big difference between your download speeds and your upload speeds. And supposedly fiber, you get the same speed both directions. That's what I'm being told. So maybe it's true. And if so, maybe that would allow us to have the bandwidth upload that we would need in order to resume live. But, we have it this way. So this is our plan. And I think I said last week that we were hoping to finish the book of Proverbs tonight. There's only 3 chapters left, and we did get 4 chapters done last week. So that should be something that we can do. So let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and we can get started. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for your blessings to us. We thank you that we have the written word, and we have this opportunity to take some time out of our busy week and open the written word and to read about you and your plan for us. And we know as we do that we need help interpreting what we read, and that you have offered that help through your Holy Spirit. So we ask that each person might receive the blessing of the Spirit to help them understand what we read and talk about. And we ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. So, switch over to the view where you can see what we're reading, if I can find my mouse cursor and get that clicked. And by the way, the reason that I was using this computer during the week is that it's the 4th week, and I did prepare a sermon presentation, and we will pre-record that probably sometime early tomorrow morning, late tonight, somewhere in that range. And we'll upload that and have that available about 11 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. So you can look forward to that. I picked a tough subject, but anyway. Here we are at Proverbs chapter 29, and again this is out of the New Living Translation, which we read just because it's different and that makes us think. And if you're aware of what we do, I frequently look at other versions just to see how they word the things that we read. And in fact, right now I'm over here turning the pages in one of those versions, so it'll be open to where we're working. Proverbs chapter 29, the first verse. Whoever stubbornly refuses to accept criticism will suddenly be destroyed beyond recovery. And there are a lot of people who, well, we call them narcissists. They never do anything wrong. So, if something messes up, it's always somebody else's fault. And they're so sure of that one of the best ways to learn is to learn from our mistakes. But it's kind of hard to learn from mistakes if you don't ever make mistakes. And that's the situation of a person that refuses to accept criticism. I don't make any mistakes. You're just venting you're jealous of me. That's your problem. So this now is your problem. I put it off on you. I don't have to change myself because it's clearly your problem, not my problem. And there's no learning and there's no growth. And we just keep living out of harmony with the Creator's design for life because, hey, we're good. We know everything we need to know. I heard a court case this week. I heard it twice actually because two different people put it up. A pro se defendant. I forget what the case was about, but it was apparently a felony because in the state where this took place, your first appearance in court will be before the district court. But if it's a felony, the district court does not have the jurisdiction, the authority to take care of your case. However, there is a procedure in place which requires the prosecutor to demonstrate to the district court judge that there is what we call probable cause. That's the lowest level of proof in our legal system. Probable cause to believe that a crime was committed, and also that the defendant, probable cause to believe that the defendant is the one who committed the crime. So they bear that double burden. And that's called a preliminary hearing. And the point of the hearing is to determine if the case should in fact be bound over to the higher circuit court. And so the district judge, while he doesn't have the authority to adjudicate the case, if the prosecution fails to provide that probable cause level, then the district court judge does have the power to say, no, I didn't find probable cause. We're not binding this over to circuit court, and the case doesn't proceed. Again, that's called a preliminary hearing. So this person was in court for accused of something at the felony level, and he wants to represent himself. He tells the judge, I want to represent myself. And the judge says, okay, I need to warn you that there is danger in representing yourself. Are you sure you don't want me to appoint an attorney for you? Oh, no, I want to represent myself. Okay. Where do you want to go with this case? Well, I wanted to know if you could let me out of jail today. Are you saying you would like me to reduce your bond? Yes. Well, before we can do that, we need to know where you're going with this case. What are we going to do on this case today? Whatever the court decides, that's up to the court's direction. And the judge is like, no, that's not how we do it. Would you like a preliminary examination? He didn't seem to know what a preliminary examination was. Well, in that state and in that legal system, that's a kind of a fundamental legal procedure. And if you're going to represent yourself, you need to understand at least that much. You should probably also understand the level of proof that is required, probable cause. Now, in actual criminal cases where you could go to jail, the standard of proof that our legal system required is beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the highest standard that we have in our legal system. However, in most civil cases where people are arguing about, well, he said he was going to fix my car, but he didn't fix it, and I need him to pay me back the money I spent because I spent all that money on him and he didn't fix my car. That's a civil case, and in that case, the level of proof required to prevail in court is called a preponderance of the evidence. In other words, the judge weighs the evidence that's presented, and if he feels that 51% or more of the evidence supports one case over the other, then he makes the decision that way. It's a lower standard. But probable cause is even lower than that. So, anyway, this poor guy, he couldn't learn because he was so sure he already knew everything. It was pretty obvious to people who understand the system that he didn't really have much knowledge at all. But he convinced himself he did. Second verse, when the godly are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked are in power, they groan. The man who loves wisdom brings joy to his father. But if he hangs around with prostitutes, his wealth is wasted. Well, if you're getting your intimacy by paying for it, yeah, that's sort of a waste of your wealth. Because unless you're a really hard, what?
Fake intimacy.
Well, yeah, it is. It's not real intimacy. It's fake. But there's, you can get fake intimacy usually, unless you're a really detestable person, for free if you go to the right places.
It's not even intimacy.
Well, no, it isn't. But the point I'm making is paying for it is, particularly in our day and age, not very bright. So I put it that way.
Yeah.
A just king gives stability to his nation, but one who demands bribes destroys it. Now, I think that's an important verse to recall because previously we have read Proverbs that talk about how money can smooth the way, or gifts can put the king on your side. Those are just statements of reality, not statements of what should be. And a verse like this tells us that a king who demands bribe is ultimately destroying his nation, because now there's corruption, and the people who have money get what they want, the people who don't have money don't get what they want, therefore they have less money, and the problem just gets worse and worse. A just king doesn't look at the social status or the holdings of the parties. A just king pays attention to reality, to what actually happened. That is supposed to be the goal of our legal system, to reconnect us to reality and to, as best as we can, determine what actually happened in a case. Did this person really do what they're accused of doing? Does the evidence support it? Or does the evidence in some cases suggest that it is pretty much impossible for this person to have done it? In which case then the finder of fact, a judge in a bench trial or a jury in a jury trial, should return a verdict of not guilty. We don't have evidence to say that this person did what it said they did. That actually, when we talk about justice, real justice is linking our decisions to reality. The punishment that is issued afterwards isn't real justice, but the justice is in that link to reality, in determining what really happened and making our decisions based on reality rather than on what we would like to see happen. Or in the case of a bride who has enough wealth in order to pay the bride. Verse 5, to flatter friends is to lay a trap for their feet. Flattery is going to be an issue in our sermon presentation tomorrow, just to give you a bit of a foretaste of what's coming. And
About me,
what?
telling about how wonderful I am. Got speechless there, dear.
And one of the problems with flattery is, it's one thing to praise somebody when they deserve it, when they did a good job. Wow, you did a good job at that, or what you did is pleasing, or that was efficiently done. And so when those things are founded in reality, that's not flattery, that's just truth.
Positive.
The problem I have is that the phone is behind the monitor on my computer here, so it's hard for me to hear what you're saying. Try again.
I said we do need positive input.
Yes, absolutely.
Negative input or no input is damaging.
And so is false good input, and that's what this verse talks about. Flattery soothes our human penchant for believing we're better than we are, that we don't need to grow, that we don't need help, that we can't grow, that there isn't any way to improve because we're already the best there is. Those kind of people end up destroying themselves.
When you give people negative input, it's a form of self-flattery.
It is, yeah. You're tearing them down to make yourself look good, usually.
Yeah.
But when you feed somebody's disconnection from reality and let them feel that they don't need to improve, that they're good just as they are, that lays a trap for their feet, because now they're susceptible to the destruction that comes from living out of harmony with the Creator's design for life.
But when you, on the other hand, give negative input where it's not due, you're creating harm to the person that you're insulting.
Well, even if the negative input is warranted and founded in reality, if it is not done in a setting where the recipient understands that you care for them and would give up your own comfort to help them, it's still destructive. So just because it's founded in reality doesn't make it okay to pass out negative feedback. That has to take place in a context where they can trust you to do what's good for them, and in a context where they're prepared to receive it. And that may be what Jesus meant with his statement, to his disciples, don't cast your pearls before swine. If somebody isn't going to be receptive to the message you have for them, even if it's fully founded in reality, it's not going to help them. Don't waste your effort. Evil people are trapped by sin, but the righteous escape, shouting for joy. The godly care about the rights of the poor. The wicked don't care at all. So when you hear somebody saying, and sometimes it's people in authority even, well, I don't care, what are they telling us? The godly care, but the wicked don't care at all. Mockers can get a whole town agitated, but the wise will calm anger. And that statement recalls to me another snippet of a court procedure. It was actually a trial that I heard, and they only uploaded just a snippet out of the trial itself. So I didn't hear what the defendant was accused of, but his attorney, at the opening of the snippet that they played, stood up and was telling the judge that he was sick and tired of being falsely accused and of the judge sitting there on the bench and doing nothing about it. And he went on and on and on about this, and he was clearly quite agitated. And several times the prosecutor in the case, a female, stood up and said, Your Honor, I object to these ad hominem attacks. And the judge kept trying to get them to sit down and be quiet for a minute. And they kept going on and going on. 5 minutes or more, this man's going on, and his opponent is objecting, and the judge is trying to get them to sit down and be quiet and listen to him for a minute. Well, eventually, the vitriol kind of spends itself, and we get to find out what the issue is. Apparently, this defense attorney wanted to bring in evidence in the form of calls from the jail. And the prosecution had objected, saying that what he was trying to introduce wasn't the whole call, and that in order to properly understand the call, you had to hear the whole thing. So she would tell the judge, I object, I don't have the whole thing here. And he didn't hear that. He heard, he didn't give me the whole thing. Well, his argument was, I gave her everything I have. Well, that wasn't her issue. She wasn't saying there was a discovery violation. She was saying, we don't have the whole call. And he took that as a personal attack. He didn't give me discovery. Well, that's not what she was saying. She was saying, we need to hear the whole call. So once the judge got them calmed down, he was able to say, here's what I'd like to do about this. You want this evidence allowed in. I think it should come in. I think the jury should hear it. But I also think that the prosecutor's concern is appropriate. I think we ought to have the whole thing. I have the power to order the jail to provide the entire call and bring that in so that the jury can hear it. And I am willing to do that. And he didn't get heated like the other two attorneys out there. And so that's what I thought of as I read this verse 8 here. Mockers can get a whole town agitated. These two attorneys at each other's throats, accusing each other of false accusations and so forth. That once the calm judge was able to get them to shut up and listen for a minute, his wise response calmed their anger and provided a solution that both of them could live with. I was a wise judge. Anyway. Verse 9, if a wise person takes a fool to court, there will be ranting and ridicule, but no satisfaction. And this is one of the verses that supports my premise that these proverbs are the sayings of the king after hearing a case, because now someone has apparently brought someone to court, and the person that they have brought to court has been what the king considers a fool, and so the case didn't go smoothly because there was ranting and ridicule, but the judge couldn't get at the truth because the fool was busy at self-justification. You'll hear that in court cases. I heard one yesterday where it was a neighbor dispute, and the judge kept trying to get them to just answer her question, and they kept wanting to go into these lengthy explanations. For example, did you have a camera pointed at her house? Well, we got these cameras over here, and these cameras. Oh, no. Yes or no? Do you have a camera pointed at her house? Well, ultimately, yes, but they didn't want to say that because that didn't go well for them. And it was very difficult for that judge to get at the facts. And in fact, she did not decide the case. She told them, I need evidence in a form that's admissible in court. You cannot bring somebody's statement into court and rely on it as evidence. They have to be here in person, so that if there are things that didn't get written down that I need to know about, I can ask them questions. And that's the basis, by the way, of the hearsay objection to evidence. You can't say what somebody else said if that somebody else isn't in court and can't be cross-examined by the other side. That kind of information is not admissible as evidence in court. And so that was what the judge was telling these people. You've both gotten surveys. You're telling me that the city building inspector has said this thing, that thing, or the other thing about what's going on, but he's not here. I can't cross-examine. I can't ask him questions. So I can't take that as evidence. And I don't have the evidence I need to decide this case. So you're going to have to come back and you're going to have to bring these people. And if you need to, I will issue a subpoena that forces them, under threat of contempt of court, forces them to come in and offer their testimony. So, yeah, ranting and ridicule, a lot of talking, but no satisfaction. The judge can't get at the truth because these people are too busy trying to justify their own side. And it sounded like both sides were doing that. Both sides were probably wrong at some level, and that makes it harder for the judge to decide, because how do you deal with this? Both sides are wrong. You can't say, well, you're right and you're wrong. I'm not appropriate because they're both wrong. But anyway. Verse 10, the bloodthirsty hate blameless people, but the upright seek to help them. There's a footnote on that one. Another possible reading of it is the bloodthirsty hate blameless people, and they seek to kill the upright. The Hebrew reads, the bloodthirsty hate blameless people. As for the upright, they seek their life. Okay, so I can see why the two different readings here, because if you put it that way, as for the upright, they seek their life, the antecedent to that pronoun they in the second line isn't clear. Are we talking about the upright? Are we talking about the bloodthirsty? If we're talking about the bloodthirsty, then we would read that seek their life as they seek to kill the upright. But if we're talking about the upright, then, and that's the interpretation that this version chose to put into the verse as it reads here, the upright seek to help them. They seek to promote their life. Fools vent their anger.
Have you never been around somebody who looked at somebody who's trying to follow the Lord and live an upright life, and somebody looks at them and sneers and says, he thinks he's better than me?
That's a very definite phenomenon in the human world.
I've seen it a lot.
Or they call you a goody two shoes or something like that.
Holier than thou.
Mm-hmm.
I was at work. It was the end of the day. There were two people left, the boss and me. And the boss was walking out the door, and he says, "Have a good weekend." He stopped and he looked at me and he says, "You know, I could never belong to your church." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you don't have any vices." What's wrong with you is that you use caffeine. I could never belong to a church that expects people to live like that. And then he turned around and he walked out. And I'm sitting there flabbergasted.
Yeah. And that's not to say that there aren't religiously oriented people who have an attitude about their righteousness and who do go around with an attitude of, I do this and I do that and I do the other thing, therefore I'm better than you. And that's problematic too.
Well, there's legalists.
Yeah. But you're right. There are people who despise the righteous because ultimately the righteous are a rebuke to them, and it bothers them to have that rebuke not spoken, just lived out in front of them.
Yeah, I've witnessed that too, and I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to cause hurt feelings on the part of the person that I would mention.
Yeah.
I've seen it up close, and it's rather distressing to see somebody act like that.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else based solely on the fact that they are feeling condemned by their own actions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If a ruler pays attention to liars, all his advisors will be wicked. The poor and the oppressor have this in common: the Lord gives sight to the eyes of both. So, yeah, whether you're high status, low status, high wealth, low wealth, whatever your station in life, ultimately, before your Creator, you're equal. The
Oh,
Lord gives sight to the eyes of both.
can I tell one?
All right?
The reason, one of the reasons that boss would make that comment, something that happened. We had we had a lunch together. The office staff had a lunch together at a restaurant. And at the end, the waitress came out and asked if we wanted dessert. And I was looking, and I saw a drink, an alcoholic drink that sounded fascinating. I don't remember what it was. And I ordered it, and I said, "Would you please leave the alcohol out of it?" And the waitress says, "You want what?" I told her again I wanted that drink, but leave the alcohol out. And she says, "You want coffee?"
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I guess. And one of my coworkers spoke up and said, "Yeah, I want that too."
Hmm.
So we had alcoholic drink coffee. No wonder he thought I was in that case.
Yeah. If a king judges the poor fairly, his throne will last forever. And that's kind of in the same line as the verse we read earlier, verse 4. A just king gives stability to his nation, but the one who demands bribes destroys it. In this case, if a judge or a king judges the poor fairly, his throne will last forever. To discipline a child produces wisdom, but a mother is disgraced by an undisciplined child or father. We could be equal about that. Granted, in Solomon's day, the the sexist expectation was that the children were raised by the woman. Dad went out and earned a living. He wasn't that involved with the children. Probably wasn't the best way to raise children, but anyway. When the wicked are in authority, sin flourishes, but the godly will live to see their downfall. Well, maybe. Perhaps we should give our standard Old Covenant understanding caveat on that verse. Discipline your children, and they will give you peace of mind and will make your heart glad. In other words, correct them and do so in a way which makes them open to correction for a lifetime. Now, in raising children, it is important that you start early, for one thing. Second, that the boundaries you set around a child get larger and larger as the child develops and is capable. And, granted, in our country, we consider the age of majority 18, and legally a parent can't force anything on a child after that age. However, we also know that the brain continues to develop into the 20s. So a wise parent will arrange things so that they can still have an influence at that advanced age as the child's brain continues to develop. But by that age, they have to have really broad boundaries so the child is mostly self determinant. And if you can make a child ready by the time they reach that age for lifelong learning, for accepting correction when needed, and for understanding I don't know everything, and there isn't anybody out there that I can't learn something from, then you have prepared them for a much more fulfilling life. And that will give you peace of mind that your child is prepared to face life and to grow and develop and be prepared for eternal life. That will make your heart glad. When people do not accept divine guidance, they run wild. But whoever obeys the law is joyful. God's law of love, when obeyed, and that's not in the sense of obeying a written rule, but rather living your life in accordance with those principles, that will bring joy. It is a joyful way to live. Words alone will not discipline a servant. The words may be understood, but they are not heeded. Yeah. The judge hears a case in court and he sends the person out and he says, I'm going to release you on your own recognizance, but you have to show up in court. Are you going to show up in court? Oh, yes, I'll show up in court. The next date comes around, the person isn't there. And the judge thinks, he understood the words, but he didn't heed them. There is more hope for a fool than for someone who speaks without thinking. And I think that's a way to understand these people who are so quick in court to try to justify themselves rather than give honest answers to questions that are asked. Well, yeah, I know it sounds bad if I said yes to that, so I've got to give my justification for it right away. And so I don't say yes or no to a yes or no question. I start saying, well, this, and that, and the other thing, and blah, 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 blah. Why are they doing that? Well, if they are feeling threatened in court, it is possible that their fight, flight, freeze mechanism has been triggered. And in that situation, then, the body shuts down the rational brain, and the emotional limbic brain is now in charge of everything. And so even though your rational brain would say, this question doesn't require anything other than yes or no, and I'm supposed to answer this question truthfully, the rational brain ain't in charge. So even though they've been told 5 times already today, just yes or no, they keep firing out this self-justification information because their rational brain isn't engaged. And so the proverb writer here says there's more hope for a fool than for someone who speaks without thinking. The version of that I heard many years ago, it was printed on a placard in somebody's workplace, and it said, "Be sure brain is engaged before putting mouth in gear. Think before you speak." A servant pampered from childhood will become a rebel. In other words, we can't always have what we want. And if you don't bring up a child to understand that and to live that and to occasionally do without something they want, not without something they need, just without something they want, then they are likely to be a rebel when they grow up because they feel like they're entitled. I want it, therefore I should have it. An angry person starts fights. A hot-tempered person commits all kinds of sin. Pride ends in humiliation, while humility brings honor. And of course, we point out from time to time, humility doesn't mean thinking everybody's better than me. Humility is just understanding that I'm not better than anybody else. Pride thinks I'm better than others. Humility says, no, I'm equal with others. And that brings honor. If you assist a thief, you only hurt yourself. You are sworn to tell the truth.
The other person think, I'm not as good as others.
That's not humility. That's something different.
I know, but what is negative does create.
That's usually a sign of a person who has been damaged and abused and told repeatedly, you're no good, you're useless, etc., etc. Abusers will tell that to people, to cow them, to put them under their power. But those are damaged people.
Hurt people. Hurt people.
Yeah, that's true. Abusers abuse because usually they were abused themselves. And very early on in their lives, they developed coping mechanisms, but they when they got to adulthood, they felt like the only way to avoid that pain is to be the abuser rather than the abused. So that's what they've learned. That's what's been ingrained in them from childhood. That's how they act. Now, I was trying to read the second line of verse 24 there. You are sworn to tell the truth, but you dare not testify. Yeah, if you've been sworn to tell the truth and you're in the wrong, it makes it hard for you to tell the truth. And a lot of people will raise their hand and swear to tell the truth under penalty of perjury and then lie like all get out. And there are multiple reasons for that. One is the human urge towards self-justification. Never admit that you're wrong. So if you have to lie to do that, then you lie. Other people have so self-deluded themselves that they actually believe what they're saying is the truth. It's not, but they think so. Fearing people is a dangerous trap. But trusting the Lord means safety. Yeah, what do you do when you're afraid of other people? You've got your guard up. You can't have close connections with people because you don't dare. They might harm you. But if you can trust in the Lord, if you can believe that your Creator deserves your trust, can be trusted, is trustworthy, then you don't spend all your emotional energy being afraid of other people. Many seek the ruler's favor, but justice comes from the Lord. That's perhaps one of the most honest things we might hear coming from Solomon's lips. People come to the king and they seek his favor. They'd like the king to decide in their favor in the case that they have brought to the king. But justice only comes from the Lord, and so the king can only give you justice if he is tied to the reality that the Creator made.
Only the Lord can give you justice because only the Lord can truly set things right.
Right. Mm-hmm. The righteous despise the unjust. The wicked despise the godly. I would take that with a grain of salt. Namely, by making a distinction between despise and hate. Hatred is destructive. And even if the person that you hate is wicked and toxic and not worth your trust, hating them is destructive to you.
But you need to distinguish between the person and the behavior.
That, right. So when we despise the unjust, we don't despise the person, we despise the behavior.
We recognize that something happened to that person at some point in their life that would lead them to act in the way that they're acting, which is a reprehensible action on your part.
And if they are unwilling to accept correction and criticism, we may need to separate ourselves from that toxic person. But we have to be sure that we despise the behavior, not the person, and we don't end up hating the person, which then becomes destructive.
Now, I'm going to use a word, I'm not sure I'm going to use it accurately, but you can correct me. When I say that forgive and forget is a misnomer. I'm not sure what misnomer is.
Well, it's
but it's not true. Forgiving does not erase your memory.
no, it doesn't. And we were, well, I forget exactly the context, but we were talking about it last night. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah. At some point, when people around us are untrustworthy, then we have to withdraw our trust and be guarded. So if you are unfaithful, well, the first time around when you betray me, when you're unfaithful, when you do something destructive to me, that's on you. I trusted you because that's my default approach to other people. But now that you've done that, I can no longer trust you, and I need to put boundaries up. And if you cross that boundary, if I don't put up that boundary, if I let you continue to do what you've done, then that's on me.
Okay, so what does misnomer mean?
Well, nomer comes from a root word that means name. So a misnomer, you have misnamed something. So you're giving a label to something that's inappropriate.
All right. Well, that's exactly what I meant then.
Yeah.
Forgiving, forget. No, you cannot forget. Forgiving does not erase your memory.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to plug something in over there. Just occurred to me. All right, Proverbs chapter 30, the sayings of Agur.
The
And
what?
that's the sayings of Agur, A-G-U-R.
Okay.
The sayings of Agur, son of Jacob, contain this message. Footnote A, or son of Jaka from Massa, or son of Jaka and oracle. All right. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to do a little search here. Can we link the augur of Proverbs 30 to a historical person? We cannot definitively link the augur of Proverbs 30 to an identifiable historical figure outside of the Bible. He remains an enigma, though scholars and historians debate a few prevailing theories regarding his identity. Here's the breakdown of the historical and scholarly consensus. Unknown sayings. The most common view is that Agur, son of Jaka, was a distinct historical teacher or wise man from the ancient Near East, because he is only mentioned in this single chapter. No corroborating historical records exist. Another theory, a pseudonym for Solomon. Many ancient Jewish traditions and some commentators argue that Agur, which can be translated as collector or gatherer, is simply a pen name for King Solomon. However, this is largely considered unlikely by modern biblical scholars due to the stark contrast in writing style and tone between Agur's words and Solomon's recognized work. A foreign Arabian origin. Many modern translations, such as the ESV, I think that's English Standard Version, but I'm not sure, interpret the Hebrew word masa, traditionally translated as prophecy or oracle, as a proper noun. This suggests Agur, and possibly King Lemuel from chapter 31, originated from Massa, an ancient tribal region in northwestern Arabia, founded by a descendant of Ishmael. If this is accurate, he may have been a Gentile sage rather than an Israelite. Symbolic meaning. Some scholars view Agur, son of Jaka, as a symbolic or didactic name rather than a historical person. In Hebrew, auger can mean collector, and jaka means obedient. Therefore, the opening verse could symbolically be translated as the words of a gatherer, the son of the pious, indicating the text is an anthology of wise sayings collected by a pious teacher. Okay, so we just looked at that just to answer that question essentially. I am weary, O God. I am weary and worn out, O God. I'm too stupid to be human, and I lack common sense. I have not mastered human wisdom, nor do I know the Holy One. Footnote B there after the word God. The Hebrew can also be translated, the man declares this to Ithiel and to Ukal. Alright. Who but God goes up to heaven and comes back down? Who holds the wind in his fists? Who wraps up the oceans in his cloak? Who has created the whole wide world? What is his name? And his son's name? Tell me if you know. Interesting that in this age of Hebrew society, where monotheism was a really big deal, and thinking of God as having more than one person was outside of the ordinary, then this author writes, what is his name? And his son's name? Tell me if you know. And I want to see that in a different version to see if it has that same connotation. Yeah, the NIV says, what is his name and the name of his son? Tell me if you know. All right, from the King James. What is his name and what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? So it's there in all those versions. I guess I'd never really seen that before. But since this opens up by saying who but God does these things, and then additional rhetorical questions, who does this, who does that, what is his name and his son's name, tell me if you know. Every word of God proves true. He is a shield to all who come to him for protection. Do not add to his words, or he may rebuke you and expose you as a liar. O God, I beg 2 favors from you. Let me have them before I die. First, help me never to tell a lie. Second, give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, who is the Lord? And if I am too poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name. In other words, we need a balance in life. Never slander a worker to the employer, or the person will curse you and you will pay for it. That's a situation you can imagine in your head. What happened that led the writer of Proverbs, of this particular proverb, to say this? Some people curse their father and do not thank their mother. They are pure in their own eyes, but they are filthy and unwashed. They look proudly around, casting disdainful glances. They have teeth like swords and fangs like knives. They devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among humanity. And one of the key elements of that is they are pure in their own eyes. They're not willing to accept correction. They're not willing to believe that they could be the problem. They look proudly around. I'm the best there ever was. Casting disdainful glances. They devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among humanity.
Muhammad Ali.
Well, I was thinking of a more contemporary character who tends to believe that everything he does is the best there ever was.
Well, that too.
The leech has two suckers that cry out, more, more. In footnote C, I think you'll find it says sisters. Daughters. All right. Two daughters who cry out, give, give. Yeah, the NIV says two daughters. What does King James say there? The King James says, the horse leech hath two daughters, crying, give, give.
The what?
Horse leech. Not just the leech, but the horse leech.
I don't know what you're saying.
An animal that you ride on in whinnies, a horse leech.
A horse what?
Leech, Leech.
A horse leech?
Yeah.
What's that?
I don't know. I guess it's a leech that attaches itself to horses. You know what a leech is, do you not?
Yeah.
And this more, that's one of the frailties of humanity. No matter how much we get, we always want more. And that's an endless and ultimately destructive cycle. And now we come across a few instances of a poetic structure that is occasionally used in Hebrew and thus in the Bible. And that is, there are in things that what? In plus one, that, in the second line. So in this case, there are three things that are never satisfied. No, four that never say enough.
And then they list 5 things?
Well, they list four. The grave, or Sheol, the barren womb, the thirsty desert, the blazing fire. Interesting. The King James actually does use grave there. Sometimes they translated that word hell, but in this case, grave. And footnote D is going to tell us that that's Sheol, and it does, so okay. And you know, you stop and think about things that never say enough. The grave. People die every day. Humans fall to the Grim Reaper, as we sometimes put it, all the time. And it's never full. The grave is never full. There's always more room for humans to end up there. The barren womb, doesn't matter how much intimacy is involved, the womb never produces anything. The thirsty desert, you can water the desert, but it doesn't help. Or the blazing fire. You have to put out a fire. If you don't, it just keeps consuming. The eye that mocks a father and despises a mother's instructions will be plucked out by ravens of the valley and eaten by vultures. There are 3 things that amaze me. No, 4 things that I don't understand. How an eagle glides through the sky, how a snake slithers on a rock, how a ship navigates the ocean, how a man loves a woman. An adulterous woman consumes a man, then wipes her mouth and says, "What's wrong with that?" There are 3 things that make the earth tremble. No, 4 it cannot endure. A slave who becomes a king, an overbearing fool who prospers, a bitter woman who finally gets a husband, a servant girl who supplants her mistress. Now, at least 2 of these are founded on beliefs of an appropriately structured society with levels of importance, which we reject. But you know, that was how people thought back then, so they wrote it down. Are there people who would be inappropriate in authority? Absolutely, yes, there are. But then, if we lived the way God intended us to live, we wouldn't need people in authority. So, there you go. There are 4 things on earth that are small but unusually wise. Ants. They aren't strong, but they store up food all summer. Hyraxes or conies or rock badgers. They aren't powerful, but they make their homes among the rocks. Makes me think of the marmots at Rocky Mountain National Park. Those animals have a lot of contact with humans up there at the top of the mountain where the road goes by, and they're very used to being photographed. And as soon as they hear the shutter, they go diving for their hole. So they'll come out and pose for a picture, and they hear the camera go off, down in the hole they go. But they do. They make their homes among the rocks. Locusts. They have no king, but they march in formation. And lizards. They are easy to catch, but they are found even in kings' palaces. There are 3 things that walk with stately stride. No, 4 that strut about. The lion, king of animals, who won't turn aside for anything. The strutting rooster, the male goat, a king as he leads his army. If you have been a fool by being proud or plotting evil, cover your mouth in shame. And then finally, as the beating of cream yields butter, and as striking the nose causes bleeding, so stirring up anger causes quarrels. I think that's a touch more colorful in the King James. Let me turn to that. Surely the churning of milk bringeth forth butter, and the wringing of the nose bringeth forth blood. So the forcing of wrath bringeth forth strife. We're running low on time here, so I'm going to kind of rush this a little bit, but we may go over a little bit too, just so we can finish the book. The sayings of King Lemuel contain this message, which his mother taught him. A message is footnoted, or of Lemuel, king of Massa, or of King Lemuel, an oracle. So we've got the Massa in there again. So King Lemuel may be a similar thing to this augur that we've read about before. O son, O my son, O son of my womb, O son of my vows, do not waste your strength on women, on those who ruin kings. And this suggests that maybe it wasn't Solomon, because if it was, he certainly didn't pay attention. This next passage, the next 4 verses, is fascinating. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, to guzzle wine. Rulers should not crave alcohol. For if they drink, they may forget the law and not give justice to the oppressed.
And I promise, coffee tastes just as good as coffee does without alcohol.
Okay. Alcohol is for the dying, and wine for those in bitter distress. Let them drink to forget their poverty and remember their troubles no more.
Maybe we better start putting alcohol in my coffee.
The King James puts it this way: give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more.
Well, there might be something to that. Him who is ready to perish, if he's on his deathbed, alcohol might be a good way to knock him out.
Yeah.
So be aware of his pain,
Yeah.
in which case it's used medicinally. By the way, if you can't catch on by the way I'm talking, I don't like alcohol.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy.
Teetotalers who want the Bible to teach that it's a sin to drink alcohol ignore these 2 verses. They like verses 4 and 5, yeah. But 6 and 7, suggesting that alcoholic beverages might be appropriate for certain people, they pass over and hope nobody notices. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless, and see that they get justice. Now, this last section of the book is sort of misogynistic in that it talks of one gender and not both. So as we read through it, let's just understand that both a wife and a husband can be virtuous and can be a benefit to their partner. It's not a one-way street.
A wife and a husband can be intimate with each other in ways that you can't be with just your.
You're not speaking loud enough. You're breaking up. We can't hear you.
I said that a husband and wife can be intimate in ways that you can't be with somebody else.
All right.
Even if it's a sexual partner, I don't think you can be as intimate with somebody that you're jacking up with as you can be with a spouse. Because you don't have the same goals, you know. If you join your life together, you become as one.
Right. Now, there's a footnote here at the beginning of this that says that verses 10 to 31 comprise a Hebrew acrostic poem. Each verse begins with a successive letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, of course, we know there are 22 letters, so if we count verse 10 and 31, we do in fact have 22 verses, so that makes sense. All right? Who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She is more precious than rubies. Her husband can trust her, and she will greatly enrich his life.
Is
She-
he the one on first?
What?
The one on first?
Oh. It's my wife being, yeah. I said, who can find a virtuous and capable wife? So she says, is that the one on first?
Who's on first?
Yeah, I know.
I told you, I'm feeling good right now. I'm sorry. I have been misbehaving. I'm sorry.
She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She finds wool and flax and busily spins it. She is like a merchant's ship, bringing her food from afar. Now, wool, that's obviously used for textiles. Flax is the source of linen. My wife recently saw a product, and so she bought a few packages of it. Flax seed crackers. How did those turn out?
Yeah,
Yeah, what?
I did.
I asked how they turned out.
I wouldn't eat them.
Yeah, I finished them. They were not particularly that tasty. They're probably pretty good for you, but anyway.
Well, my diet is so limited, and I can't just eat.
Yeah.
Everything I eat makes me sick, and I'd love to have a snack sometime. And a flaxseed cracker would probably not hurt me, but I have to be able to not want to barf it back up. I mean, those things were not fit to eat.
She finds wool and flax and busily spins it. She's like a merchant ship, bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plan the day's work for her servant girls. She goes. What?
This is what an ideal wife is like. Leave me out. I'll go looking for a new wife instead of being a wife.
She goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earrings, she plants a vineyard. She is energetic and strong, a hard worker. She makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. Her hands are busy spinning thread, her fingers twisting fiber. She extends a helping hand to the poor and opens her arms to the needy. She has no fear of winter for her household, for everyone has warm clothes, or the Hebrew reads scarlet clothes. The warm comes from the Greek and Latin versions. Why we would pay any attention to the Latin version, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not sure why the color of your garment would make you warm.
She makes her own bedspreads. She dresses in fine linen and purple gowns. Her husband is well known at the city gates where he sits with the other civic leaders. She makes belted linen garments and sashes to sell to the merchants. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear for the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children.
Laziness. He's busy sitting at the gate shooting the breeze with his buddy.
Oh well, there's probably some value to that viewpoint that was what happened in that day. That these guys got together and got inflated with their own importance and their own wisdom, and yeah. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty does not last. But a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. So there, we've run over by almost 10 minutes. My nose is driving me nuts. And like I say, we do have a sermon presentation prepared that we'll upload and release hopefully tomorrow, Lord willing. I still have to go through and do another proofreading run through it. But we'll see. We may probably continue to pre-record and upload like this until we get a reliable stream that won't throttle our connection. But anyway, that's it for this session. We'll begin the book of Ecclesiastes next week. We invite you to join us then. And until then, we say goodbye and God bless.